In 1954, a man named James Olds accidentally discovered something that should have been impossible. He was trying to map the brain. He implanted a tiny electrode into a rat's skull, wired it to a lever, and gave the rat control. Every time it pressed the lever, a small pulse of electricity fired into a specific region of its brain. He expected nothing interesting. What he got changed everything we thought we understood about what keeps a living thing alive. The rat pressed the lever. Then again. Then again. It didn't stop. It pressed the lever 7,000 times in a single hour. It ignored food. It ignored water. It walked over electrified floors just to reach the lever. When Olds physically removed the lever, the rat ran to the corner where it had been and pressed the empty air. It had discovered a shortcut directly into the reward center of its own brain, and given that shortcut, it chose it over everything else until it died. For decades, scientists called this the pleasure center, the part of the brain that made you feel good. But that wasn't quite right. And the real answer is far stranger, because what Olds had actually found wasn't the place that produces pleasure, it was the place that produces wanting. The neuroscientist Kent Berridge spent years pulling these two things apart, wanting and liking. They feel identical from the inside. When you want something and then get it, the wanting and the pleasure blur together into one sensation you just call good. But they run on completely different systems. Liking, actual pleasure, the moment of satisfaction, is a small, fragile network buried deep in the brain, easy to damage, quick to fade. Wanting is something else. It runs on dopamine, and it is enormous, ancient, almost impossible to turn off. Berridge discovered this by studying rats whose dopamine systems had been destroyed. These rats could no longer want anything. They would not seek food. They would not press levers. They would not move towards anything they had previously desired. But if you placed food directly in their mouths, they still liked it. Their faces showed the same satisfaction responses. The pleasure system was intact. They just couldn't want. And here is the part nobody tells you. Wanting doesn't require a reward at the end. It doesn't even require the possibility of one. The lever in Olds' experiment didn't give the rat anything real. There was no food, no mate, no safety, just a signal that said, "This matters, go get it." And the rat's brain treated that signal as more important than survival itself. Now think about what that means. Every human being is running this same system right now. Every time you check your phone and feel that small pull toward the screen before you've even registered what you're looking for. Every time you open a tab without deciding to. Every time you feel restless for no reason you can name. That's wanting running without a destination. And the research shows something disturbing. When wanting runs without resolution, when the system fires and nothing satisfies it, the brain doesn't calm down. It escalates. In 1975, a psychologist named Martin Seligman described something he called learned helplessness. He had shown that animals repeatedly exposed to inescapable discomfort eventually stopped trying to escape even when escape became possible. They lay down. They gave up. But the inverse went almost completely unstudied. What happens to an animal that has nothing to want? In the 1960s, a series of experiments at McGill University gave college students everything they needed and removed everything they had to do. Private rooms, unlimited food, more money per day than most of them earned in a week. The only condition was that they had to stay. No tasks, no goals, no problems to solve. The researchers expected rest, recovery, contentment. Within 24 hours, the students started to deteriorate. They couldn't concentrate. They became irritable, then anxious, then frightened. Many began experiencing hallucinations, visual distortions, voices. One student reported being followed by a procession of squirrels in military uniforms. Another could not stop hearing a jukebox playing songs that weren't there. None of them lasted more than 3 days. The researchers had assumed boredom was the absence of stimulation, a neutral state, an inconvenience. What they found was that boredom is a threat signal, An alarm the brain fires when it cannot find anything to move toward, and when that alarm runs long enough with no answer, the brain begins generating its own threats just to give the wanting system something to track. This is not a metaphor. It is a documented neurological process. The brain would rather construct an enemy than operate without a target. In the absence of real problems, it manufactures them. And this scales. Anthropologists studying populations that underwent sudden shifts from scarcity to abundance, communities where food, shelter, and safety became near guaranteed within a single generation, documented something consistent. Rates of anxiety disorders didn't fall, they rose. Suicide rates climbed. Depression expanded faster in the comfortable parts of the world than in the struggling ones. Viktor Frankl, who survived 3 years in Nazi concentration camps, wrote afterward that he had observed something that never left him. The prisoners who maintained a sense of purpose, who had something to move toward, even something small, a person to return to, a manuscript to finish, a task to complete, had significantly higher rates of survival than those who did not.
Not because purpose gave them calories, not because meaning warmed them in winter, but because the wanting system, given a direction, keeps a body organized. It keeps the blood moving forward. Take the direction away, and the system turns inward. He wrote that the most dangerous moment in the camps was not when conditions worsened, it was when a prisoner stopped imagining a future. That was usually the last thing they did. We have built a world that is, by nearly every historical measure, extraordinarily safe. The most immediate threats that shaped 300,000 years of human neurological development, predators, starvation, infection, cold, have been largely removed for most people in most places, and we called this progress. It is progress, but the wanting system didn't get the update. It still wakes up every morning looking for a problem to solve, a gap to close, a threat to move against. And when it can't find one, it doesn't go quiet, it goes looking.
This is why comfortable people pick fights, why abundance produces outrage, why people with everything they need will voluntarily walk into suffering, cold plunges, extreme fasting, ultra-marathons across deserts, just to feel the wanting system fire in a direction. The body needs resistance the way a muscle needs weight, not because suffering is good, but because the system that keeps you alive was built around the premise that there will always be something to move toward. Remove the something, and the system doesn't know what to do with itself. Old's rat pressed the lever until it died because the lever gave it the signal without the substance, the feeling of forward motion with no actual destination. Modern life, for a significant portion of the population, is the lever. Not because life is empty, but because the infrastructure of comfort has quietly removed most of the genuine resistance that once gave the wanting system a real answer. And the brain responds the way it always has. It generates what it needs: urgency, threat, purpose, stakes, real or not. The experiment at McGill didn't fail because the students were weak. It failed because the design was missing something the researchers hadn't thought to include, something to want. Seligman eventually reframed his entire model. He stopped studying what broke people and started studying what held them together. His answer, after decades of research, was a single word: not happiness, not comfort, not safety. Meaning. The sense that there is somewhere to move and a reason to move there. Which is, in the end, exactly what the rat in Old's cage was looking for. It just got handed a counterfeit version, and it took the deal.